If I was to hop inside a time machine and go back 18 years to when I first started wrestling, what would I have done differently? Looking back on both my wrestling and my coaching career, I came up with a 3-step improvement cycle that I believe would have allowed me to win a national championship. Step 1, practice and compete. This is where you guys are collecting the information. Now, what things would I have done differently practicing and competing? First thing, I would have been significantly more offensive. If you want to improve quickly, you need to make mistakes, a lot of mistakes, so that you can identify where you need to improve on. So if you're just staring at your practice partner during a live session and attacking maybe once a match or twice a match, you're not gonna have enough information, you're not gonna make enough mistakes to improve on, especially in the practice room where there is no consequence for attacking or losing or getting taken down. Attack, attack, attack. Put yourself in the positions that you're trying to work on as quickly as possible and as many times as possible so you guys can have a ton of feedback to go and improve upon. Number 2, I would have competed at harder competitions, especially going into 8th grade and into high school. Now, this depends on what level of wrestling you are currently at, but I was at the state championship level and I wanted to get to that national level. But I was only wrestling in one competition that was at the national level every single year. So I didn't have enough feedback from these tougher competitions to be able to see what I needed to improve on. I also realized whenever I went out and ended up losing at these higher level competitions, I would gain motivation. But that motivation to train hard and to catch the next level competition fades away. So you need constant reminders of tough competitions above your current level so that you're able to continue to keep pursuing that next level in the sport. Number 3, I would have sparred more and drilled less. Drilling is great, especially when you're starting out and trying to learn all of these fundamental movements. But especially as you start to improve and start to get more experienced, you don't tend to see what things you need to work on by just drilling alone. As I walk around the room as a coach and I walk past my more experienced wrestlers, there's very little mistakes they're making while drilling. But if I then take those same wrestlers, put them in a certain position and have them spar or even wrestle live from that position, I can quickly identify what techniques they need to implement and improve on to get better in those positions. Now, going along with sparring, what positions should you be spending the most time working in? Recently, my brother Steven and world-renowned jiu-jitsu coach John Danaher had a conversation about what are the most important positions in wrestling that you should be sparring, and here is the list. You should be working both the offensive and defensive positions for a single leg, for a high crotch, for a double leg, for a body rear lock, for a front headlock, and for a hip-to-hip dogfight position or body whizzer position. And this includes all of those little smaller positions that you would get into. Meaning, for high crotch, you need to work offense and defense on your feet, on the mat, in the crackdown position. For single leg, you need to work the offense and defense on your feet, in a backside finish, out the back door finish. So you need to spend so much time in these positions that I listed. Now, the reason these positions are so important is they are the scoring positions. This is where you end up scoring the takedown or getting scored on. So you need to spend the most time where the points are being put on the scoreboard. Now moving on to step number 2, record and evaluate your results. If I was to go back and start my wrestling journey all over, I would be journaling. After every practice, I would either text myself something, I would write it in my notes, I could have a physical journal. It doesn't really matter and it doesn't have to be super complicated. If I struggled in practice to finish a high crotch, I would text myself, work on high crotch finishes next practice. If I struggled to score from the front headlock, I would just text myself that. Make sure to ask coach how to score from this position and work it next practice. If you're constantly recording the things you're struggling with, thinking about them, and being intentional going into the practice room, you're going to never plateau and continue to improve. The second thing I would have done is recorded and reviewed my matches. Wrestling in a match is different than practice. You need to make sure you're looking at your matches, seeing what things you're doing wrong, and seeing what things you need to improve on that following week of practice. Watch your matches and learn how to beat yourself, and then fill in all those gaps and holes in your game so that nobody can beat you. Now moving on to step number 3, solve and implement. I would have found the best coaches. I would have went online and sought out the best information on the things I was struggling with, and that's what I would have trusted. Getting the right solution to the technical problem you're dealing with is super critical, because if you're a hardworking kid like I was and somebody tells you the wrong technique to use, you're going to work so hard at learning that technique, at implementing that technique, but all that hard work was for nothing, because putting effort behind a move that's not going to work in that situation is only going to lead to failure. Another resource you can even look to is your teammates, but go out and search the best information you can possibly get your hands on. Right now, it's probably online because the best coaches and the best information is being put out there for free on YouTube. The next thing I would have done is I would have started private lessons much sooner. Obviously, this is based on your financial situation, but in my case, private lessons made a big difference in my wrestling, especially with the right coach. I was always a hardworking kid, wrestling twice a day, lifting and putting in all the effort needed. But what I lacked was guidance with the right technique and the right mindset to help me jump levels quicker. Now, wrestling is an individual sport, so what you're doing in practice may not be the most important thing for you to work on. So it's important that at the end of practice, you're spending time to ask questions with your coaches, to get those questions answered, and to spend time working on those specific areas you saw either in practice the day before or in matches you were reviewing. And the last thing I want to speak on is make sure you're doing all of this within the lens of your personal wrestling system. Something that a lot of wrestlers struggle with is changing from move to move year after year. One year they're leg riders, the next year they love cradles, the following year they love arm bars, and they don't spend enough time on a position to really master it. So make sure you guys are writing out your system, what your favorite positions are and your favorite techniques are, and you're improving on those or adding to those instead of constantly changing from technique to technique. Let me give you a quick example of how I improved when I was in college. I was really good at the underhook position. So step 1, I practiced my underhook. I competed with my underhook, and I would specifically go to an underhook throw by single. After reviewing some of my matches, I realized I couldn't hit this technique when my opponents would get shoulder positioning. After reviewing some of my matches, I realized I couldn't get to this technique because my opponents were using head positioning on the same shoulder of the underhook side. I then went and worked with my coaches and my teammates to figure out a technique or a tactic that would allow me to still score when I had an underhook and my opponent had head position. We came up with the head pinch. This technique I used throughout the rest of my college career, and it really allowed me to beat a lot of high-level competitors. But as you see, it wasn't this underhook throw by doesn't work, let me do a inside tie fireman's on the opposite side. It was connected, and it was built into my system and ultimately worked much better for me because now I was able to score at any moment when I had my underhook position. If you enjoyed this video and want to learn more about that sparring I talked about earlier, check out my drilling secrets video right here.